Hello everyone, we are from Group 2 and today we will explain about culture and ideology in film. But before that, I will introduce member of this group. Dwi Darmawan, Elsa Pagita Tarigan, Herianto, Stace Life Awing, and Fandri. So first we have culture and ideology in film. Ideology is usually defined as a body of ideas reflecting the social needs and aspirations of an individuals, groups, class, or culture. It also means a set of values that are implicit in any human enterprise. Virtually, movie presents us with role models, ideal ways of behaving, negative traits, and an implied morality based on the filmmaker's sense of right and wrong. Next, we have the left-center-right model. In left wing, we have anarchisms, communism, socialisms, and liberalisms, while right wing, we have conservatism, monarchism, Nazism, and fascism. So, traditionally, journalists and political scientists have used the three-party left-center-right model in differentiating political ideologies. We can differentiate a film's ideology by focusing on some key institutions and values and analyzing how the characters relate to them. Democratic versus hierarchical. So leftists tend to emphasize the similarities among people. We all eat about the same amount of food, breathe the same amount of air. Likewise, leftists believe that society's resources should be distributed in roughly equal portions as is implied in the Human Condition movie and Big Short movie. Authority figures are morally skilled managers and not intrinsically superior to the people they are responsible to. Important institutions should be publicly owned in some societies. All basic industries such as banking, utilities, health, and education are operated for the equal benefit of all citizens. The emphasis is on the collective, the communal. Rightists emphasize the differences between people and insisting that the best and the brightest are entitled to a larger share of power and the economic pie than less productive workers, as is implied in Henry V movie. Authority should be respected. Social institutions are guided by strong leaders, not the rank and file or even average citizens. Most institutions should be privately owned, with profits as the main incentive to productivity. The emphasis is on the individual and an elite managerial class. For the example for hierarchy is Kobayashi's The Human Condition trilogy. It is a scathing indictment of atrocities committed by the Japanese Imperial Army during World War II. The trilogy stirred up a fierce controversy with its depiction of torture, persecution, and kidnapped Chinese civilians forced to become slave laborers in a Japanese prisoner of war camp. The other two installments are entitled A Soldier's Prayer and The Road to Eternity. Its film of trilogy is over 3 hours long and is told from the point of view of its idealistic hero, Nakadai, a socialist who romanticized the Soviet Union as a promised land of human fellowships. For the democratic, we have Henry V. Henry V, based on Shakespeare's play, is monarchist in its values, like the original sorts. The story deals with the rite of passage and how the former Hellraiser, Prince Hal, proves himself as a great leader in battle and a worthy king. His army, although not anonymous, is kept in the background as we seen in the picture.
Next is environment versus heredity. Levi's believe that human behavior is learned and can be changed by proper environmental incentives. Antisocial behavior is largely the result of poverty, prejudice, lack of education, and low social status rather than human nature or lack of character. As in the chain of Jimmy Blacksmith. Meanwhile, practice believe that character is largely inborn and genetically inherited. Hence, the emphasis of many right-wingers on lineage and the advance of coming from a good family, as in late spring and late autumn. In some Asian society, especially ancestor worship is common.
So the next ideology in film is relative versus absolute. Leftists believe that we ought to be flexible in our judgment. Children are characteristically raised in a permissive environment and encouraged in self-expression, as in movie My Life as a Dog. Moral values are merely social convention, not eternal verities. Issues of right and wrong must be placed in social context, including any mitigating circumstance before we can judge them fairly. Meanwhile, the absolute rights are more absolute in human behavior. Children are expected to be disciplined, respectful, and obedient to their elders, as in movie Pinocchio. As we know in Pinocchio movies, Pinocchio is punished when he tells lies. His nose is getting longer and longer when he tells lies. This hopefully to be an example for other children to always be honest and do not lie to others. Right and wrong are fairly clear-cut and ought to be evaluated according to a strict code of conduct. Violations of moral principles ought to be punished to maintain law in order to set an example for others, just like in Pinocchio movie.
Secular versus religious. Secular and religious are two conflicting things. It means secular not concerned with or related to religious, and religious not related to or concerned with secular. Secular itself is a concept wherein a state or country prefers to be officially neutral in the matters of religion, and religious is concerned and related to religion as an organized collection of beliefs, culture system, and worldviews that relate humanity to an order of existence. Religious is used for people who are in accordance with the principle of religion. The members are ordained as deacons, priests, or bishops, who are then referred to as religious clergy. Others are openly critical of organized religion, which they view as simply another social institution with a set of economic interests to protect, as in Acquire the Word of God movie. It is the bishop who exercise governance over diocese members. They are called as diocesan clergy. The clergy enjoy a prestigious status and are respected as moral arbiters. Leftists believe that religion is a private matter and it should not concern of governments. They are tend to be attached to progressive denominations which are more democratically organized than authoritarian or hierarchical religions. Some authoritarian societies decree an official faith for all their citizens, and non-believers are sometimes treated as second-class citizens if they are tolerated at all, like a core religion privileged status, as example in the Virgin Spring movie.
Next is future versus past. In general, Levi's view the past with disdain because it was dominated by ignorance, class conflict, and exploitation of the weak. The future, on the other hand, is filled with hope, with infinite promise of improvement, as can be seen in High Hopes. The optimism that typifies many left-wingers is based on the idea of progress and evolution toward a more just and equitable society. Meanwhile, people on the right have a deep veneration for the past, for ancient rituals, and especially for tradition. Virtually all of the films of Yuichiro Ozu type T destroyed. Rightists tend to disdain the present as a corruption of a lost golden age, like John's Ford, the man who shot at Liberty Valance. They view the future with skepticism, for it holds only more change, and change is what traces and glories of the past. Consequently, rightists tend to be pessimistic about the human condition, citing the lackness of standards and crumbling morality of modern life. Many of the films of Ingmar Bergman reflects this pessimistic view.
Cooperation versus competition. People on the left believe that social progress is best achieved by a cooperative effort on the part of all citizens toward a common goal. As in October, the role of government is to guarantee the basic needs of life, work, health, education, and so forth. And this can be most efficiently accomplished if everyone feels he or she is contributing to the common good. Practice emphasis open market principle and the need for competition to bring out the best in everyone, as in Safety Last, a classic film text of the American go-getter philosophy of the 19th and 20th.
And the next is outsiders versus insiders. Outsider viewpoints feature protagonists who initially have a little familiarity with the world in which the story takes place, or in simple words, characters who are strangers or newcomers to the world in which story takes place. These viewpoints are present almost by definition in portal fantasies and stories involving time travel. Outsider viewpoints are also present in epic fantasy or any narrative large enough that the protagonist's quest extends far enough to allow that character to become an outsider themselves. These narratives often require protagonists to adapt significantly to fit into the world of story, while also giving protagonists scope to use talents or skills from their old world to solve problems in new one. We can see this type of ideology in Lord of the Rings movie. While the story begins in the Hobbit's home ground of the Shire, by the middle of the trilogy, the Hobbits are enmeshed in the completely unfamiliar settings of Rohan, Minas Tirith, and Mordor. Meanwhile, insider viewpoints feature protagonists who are already a part of the world or culture in which the story takes place. It often have narrative arcs that involve subverting the structures that defines the character's world. As such, the main conflict can be primarily internal conflicts rather than external ones. These stories can often feature significant internal conflict as the protagonists struggle with changed understanding of their own world, its moral underpinnings, and their own role in society, as we can see in the Star Wars The Force Awakens movie. In the movie, Finn, a former stormtrooper, flees the First Order and reluctantly teams up with the Resistance to fight against his former employers. The movie's villain, Kylo Ren, was raised in the bosom of the Resistance trained by Luke Skywalker, and then turns against his own family to further his quest for power. Consider how much weaker the movie would be if, instead, Kylo Ren had been a random dark apprentice without any connection to the Solo family, or if Finn had simply been a random citizen of Jakku the day Rey showed up with a BB-8 in tow.
International versus nationalistic. Leftists are global in their perspective, emphasizing the universality of human needs irrespective of country, race, or culture. As in Hearts and Mind, they often refer to the family of man as a more appropriate perspective than the narrow limits of the nuclear family. Right-wingers tend to be strongly patriotic, often regarding people from the other countries as vastly inferior. Family, country, and God is a popular slogan in many right-wing societies. It might well represent the credo of the great American director John Ford, as in Fort Apache.
Next, we have sexual freedom and marital monogamy. Leftists believe that who you have sex with is nobody else's business. They often accept homosexuality as a valid lifestyle and they reject attempts to regulate sexual behavior among consenting adults, as in Seven Beauties movie. In the area of reproduction too, leftists emphasize privacy, personal choice, and non-interference. Birth control, including abortion as well as contraception, is regarded as a basic right. Rightists regard the family as a sanctified institution, and anything that threatens the family is viewed with hostility, as in Ford, the Grabs of War movie. Premarital sex, homosexuality, and extramarital sex are condemned. For sexual freedom, we have Seven Beauties. Lena Wertmuller was criticized by some feminist film critics for featuring vulgar, garrulous female characters who look like Rubens and Titian nudes that put together. Indeed, one critic headlined her review, "Is Lena Wertmuller really just one of the boys?" Wertmuller delights in irony, in paradoxes. She is a consistent champion of the cause of women, but she's not a propagandist. However funny her women characters are, and the men are just as funny. Wertmuller females are usually strong with a surer sense of personal identity than the males. In these World War II films, perhaps her greatest work, she satirized the macho code of honor by equating a bullying older brother with the institutions of patriarchy, the mafia, and fascism itself. Next is marital monogamy. For the example, like in the Grabs of War movie. The Grabs of War movie centers on a disposed family of Okies and their odysseys from the drought-stricken plains of Oklahoma to the promised land of California. In adapting John Steinbeck's famous book, Ford transformed the Marxist authors of the novel into a masterpiece of Christian humanism, emphasizing the indomitability of the Joad family, who are held together by the powerful matriarch Majot. Like many conservatives, Ford believed that the role of women in society is a noble one, to uphold the values of home and hearth, to preserve the institution of the family above all others. See also Stephen G. Ross, Hollywood Left and Right, in Oxford University Press 2012. Ross' history covers the connections between politics and Hollywood film productions from the silent era to the present.
Movie. The next is culture in film. Culture in film are represented about the characteristic of many countries, such as the tradition, institution, arts, myths, and belief that are characteristic of a given community or population. Every nation has a characteristic way of looking at life, a set of values that is typical of a given culture. For people who have not been exposed to alternative cultures, their own norms might seem universal. Their knowledge of other culture is often derived from movies. For example, American films typically sympathize with the individual versus society. Most movies romanticize underdogs, rebels, outlaws, and mavericks, especially in such genres as gangster films, western and action movies, which stress violence and extreme of individuality. American films are also strongly sexual and pacifist compared with most foreign movies. Typically, many people stereotype Americans as lawless, sex-obsessed, and fast. In culturally diverse countries like the United States, there are many subcultures, pockets of cultures, values that coexist within the dominant ideology. Movies that explore subculture generally emphasize the fragile balance between conflicting culture values. Next is the Pixar movie directed by Hector Bovensa in 1981 in Brazil. Filmmakers in emerging societies are often left-wing in their orientation, championing the cause of the poor, the forgotten, and the despised. Babenko's film explored the culture of poverty by focusing on the violent life of Fixot, a lonely youth who is typical of millions of abandoned street urchins. In a country of 184 million, over 95% live in desperate poverty, forced to scratch out the major survival by whatever means they can. Fernando Ramos de Silva, who plays Pixot, was one of a family of 10 children who grew up in the ghettos of Sao Paulo. 7 years after this movie was made, he was so shot and killed in an attempted armed robbery. He was 19. And the next is the Grapes of Wrath movie, directed by John Ford, United States in 1940 in United States of America. Widely regarded as the greatest film dealing with the depression of the 1930s. The Grapes of Wrath centers on a dispossessed family of Okies and their odyssey from the drought-stricken plains of Oklahoma to the promised land of California. In adapting John Steinbeck's famous book, Ford transformed the Marxist outrage of the novel into a masterpiece of Christian humanism, emphasizing the indomitability of the Jod family, who are held together by the powerful matriarch Majod. Like many conservatives, Ford believe that the role of women in society is a noble one, to uphold the values of home and hearth, to preserve the institution of the family above all others. She also Stephen Jarrell's Hollywoodly Left and Right in Oxford University Press. Ross' history covers the connection between political and Hollywood film production from the silent era to present 20th Century Fox.